Would you state your name?
I am Josh Kanhai.
Perhaps I could just ask for some feedback from the audio people as to whether his voice is being clearly recorded. Yes. Okay, but if you could still throw your voice a
No
little
problem.
bit more, that would be wonderful. What is your address?
I am at Lot 7, Turkine, Greater Georgetown.
That's much better. And are you a medical doctor?
Yes, by profession.
Are you registered with the Medical Board of Guyana?
Yes, I am registered with the Medical Council of Guyana.
Are you familiar with a party called the New Movement Party, the NMP?
Yes, I am familiar with that party.
And in what capacity?
Well, I was the founder and the general secretary of that political party at the time.
And when did you found the party?
This party was founded in 2019.
Now, I want to take you to the March 2020 elections. Did NMP contest the general elections for that date?
Yes, we contested the general elections.
And did you contest in all 10 regions?
No, we had contested in 6 of those 10 regions.
Are you familiar with the term list of candidates?
Yes.
So, for your party, who was the leader of the list for candidates?
I was the deputy leader of that list, and my colleague Dr. Ford was the leader of that list.
Okay, could you spell his name?
Dr. Gerald Ford. F-O-R-D-E.
Thank you. Now, in order for a party to be able to contest in a general election, what does that party have to first submit?
Well, we must submit our list of candidates on the nominations day.
And to whom do you submit that list?
We submit that list to the Chief Elections Officer of GCOM,
GCOM meaning?
being the Guyana Election Commission.
And did your party submit such a list?
Yes, we did.
And was your list accepted?
Yes, our list was accepted.
Now, Dr. Kanhai, you gave a statement
Yes, I did.
and you signed it
Yes, ma'am. All 4 or
and,
how much
and
pages?
initialed it.
Yes,
If you see it again, will you be able to identify it?
should be able to.
I'm asking that this document be shown to the witness. Have a look at that document and will you show the commissioners where you see your signature on that document?
Yes, sir. Right here.
Is your signature at the back as well?
Yes, and so far all of the pages, as I recall.
I'm asking that this be admitted as JK1, and I have 3 copies for the commissioners. At which physical location is the list supposed to be submitted?
Well, at this election, the list was being submitted at the Humana Yana.
Humana Yana.
Humana Yana.
On election day, what did you do?
Well, I I'm entitled to vote, so I went to the ballot box, I placed my vote, and I was also a representative for my party. I was one of the representatives which would have been moving throughout, but I would have been stationed at the Turkine polling station where I would have been voting.
Okay. Dr. Kanhai, I forgot to tell you one other thing, which is to say, because you are being recorded, we want to make sure that we get a clear recording. So you have to speak a little more slowly and try to keep the volume up.
No problem.
Okay? So apart from voting and going to Turkine, did you do anything else on election day?
Well, as far as my memory recall, we were just busy with the election and nothing else.
Were you there at the polling station when the polls were closed?
Yes, it was there up to the afternoon.
And did you receive anything as the agent for your party from the presiding officer?
Yes, we had statement of poll given to us a copy, and one was also placed outside of that polling station
By whom?
by the GCOM officer.
I'm going to take you to the 4th of March 2020. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
And during the course of that morning, where were you?
I was at my work at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation.
And did you receive certain information?
Yes, I would have received some information from colleagues saying that Mr. Mingo, who was the returning officer, Region 4, had basically was picked up by an ambulance which belonged to the public hospital and taken to where I was.
Sorry, I didn't get that clear.
Right.
Could you repeat that, please?
So I
Please stop
received a call from a colleague who told me that Mr. Mingo was picked up by an ambulance and being taken to the Georgetown Public Hospital.
And that is where you were working at the time?
Yes.
And where you were on duty at the time?
Yes.
Later that day, did you go to Ashman's building?
Yes, I would have visited the building later that day.
And when you went there, did you see Mr. Mingo?
Well, he was with some colleagues. He was talking to GCOM officials.
You're still a bit soft, huh? Yes. Could
Yes.
you repeat what you just said?
Yes, I would have seen him speaking with some GCOM officials.
And which part of Ashman's building was he in?
This was to the inside of the building.
In any particular room?
No, this was in the general open hall.
Now, when you say you went to Ashman's building, can you remember the address to which you went?
Well, I do not know the specific address for the Ashman's building, but it's in the vicinity of Stabrook Market.
Sure. And when you went to the building, did you see other party agents?
Yes, other party agents were there.
And did you see any observers?
Yes, observers were there as well.
Can you remember now, Dr. Kanhai, any of the party agents who you saw?
Yes, so there were agents from the Liberty and Justice Party. I recall Mr. Schumann being there, along with his party agent, Mr. Devon. I can't recall his last name. There was party agents from the People's Progressive Party. They were Miss Sonia Parag along with Miss Singh. Can't recall her first name. There was also
Dr. Kanhai, I think
You need to lift your voice.
the commissioners, I think what is happening, commissioners, when he gets too close to the microphone, he's getting a little feedback. So I'm wondering if we could try the option of a chair.
I was thinking that. That's-
Yes.
Let him sit down.
right, this works better.
Perhaps I can inquire.
Yes.
Okay.
Just do not see this.
Now, please don't fall backwards.
I'll try not to.
Okay. Tilt the microphone towards you and speak into it. There we are. So you were telling us about seeing party agents at the Ashman's building, and you were telling us who were the party agents you saw.
Yes.
Could you just go over that, because I'm not sure we got it recorded.
Right. So when I went over to the Ashman's building, the party agents that I saw, I recall Mr. Schumann from the Liberty and Justice Party, along with a Mr. Devon. I cannot recall his last name at this point. I also saw from the People's Progressive Party, the Mr. Sonias Parag was there, and Miss Singh was there, along with a Mr. Ses Narayan Singh. Other party agents were there from the People's Republican Party, and if I recall, someone from the URP as well was there.
Okay. Do you recall seeing any observers there at the time?
Yes, observers were present.
And did you recognize any of them?
Well, I recognized, I don't know them by name, but from their badges, I recognized AmCham was there. I recognized the Commonwealth was there as well. And another local observer was there.
Sure. Now, you say that when you went to Ashman's building, you saw Mr. Mingo at the building. How did he appear to you?
Well, he seemed to be looking fine.
Okay. And was he speaking to anyone at that time?
Yes, he was in conversations with persons who appeared to be working with Ghana Election Commission.
And did you observe whether the CEO was there at the time?
I recall that my colleagues had told me that he had vacated the building.
Okay, I want you to try to avoid telling us what you heard from other people.
No problem.
All right? So at that time you didn't see the CEO?
No.
When you got to Ashman's building, are you able to recall whether the verification process was going on at that time?
No, it was not going on at that time.
And when you realized that nothing was happening or it was not going on, did you make inquiries as to what had happened?
Yes.
Who did you make those inquiries of?
Well, from my colleagues as well as other party supporters.
And can you tell us, well, one name in particular of a person you spoke to?
Mr. Schumann was there.
Mr.
Yes.
Schumann. You spoke to Mr. Schumann and you got certain information.
Yes.
And what information did you get from Mr. Schumann?
Well, he had told me that the clerks were complaining that they were tired and they didn't. They were taking frequent breaks and they wanted rest time. So
Okay.
that was one of the rest periods.
While you were at Ashman's building, at about 6:30 that evening, did anything occur?
Yes. Well, that evening itself, there was same stalling of the process. We had started back the tabulation process, and we had ventured into calling out the numbers and going through that process. At that time, they asked for interruption again for breaks
Okay,
and
so
for.
you're going way too quickly.
Oh,
Way too quickly. So let's walk it back a bit. So I asked you at about 6:30 p.m. whether you were in Ashman's building.
mhm.
Were you?
Yes.
Were you in the tabulation room?
Yes.
Was anything taking place in the tabulation room?
Yes, we were going through the tabulation process whereby the clerk was calling from a laptop, calling numbers from a laptop, and we were verifying those numbers with our numbers.
And when you say We'll try to talk about yourself. So, you were verifying, or your party was verifying the numbers, and what document were you using to verify the numbers?
We were using the SOPs that we would have had, the statement of polls.
And did this process continue?
No, well, for that afternoon, it had started and then it had stopped due to the same complaints that I was told about.
Okay. Can you remember whether it stopped around 9 p.m.?
Yes, around 9 p.m. that was when.
And why did it then stop?
Well, the person at the computer at that time was basically saying that he was pointing to workers at the back.
He's pointing to who?
To two of the workers at the back of that same room. They were having their heads bent over and apparently resting. And he was telling us that they're resting and they can't continue for the night, or let us rest for a few hours and then we'll start back.
And what was your party's response to that?
Well, we had myself. I was feeling very disgusted because that was probably the third time that we had stopped for the afternoon to take a break. So we started to get into verbal exchanges, asking them if they can continue, if they can exchange and interchange, and along those lines.
And did other party agents express any concerns in your presence?
Yes, party agents had similar concerns as mine.
And did persons from APNU and AFC object?
I didn't recall them objecting or even saying anything at that point.
Now, when you all objected or expressed your concerns, what was the response of the GCOM employee to whom you had spoken?
Well, at that point, he had gotten frustrated as well, and he was insisting that we stop. So he had started to arrange his desk and started to pack, and to basically pack up and go to the other office where they're resting.
So this particular employee left the tabulation room?
Yes, he eventually left the tabulation room.
And after he left, did you remain in that room?
Yes, we were sitting in that room talking amongst ourselves.
Are you familiar with the name Sonia Parag?
Yes.
And who is Miss Parag?
Ms. Parag was one of the tabulation agents for the PPPC.
And PPPC stands for what?
The People's Progressive Party Civic.
And did Miss Parag say anything to you?
Yes, I recall vividly that she stood up and she alerted us that the flash drive... She stood up and she alerted us that the flash drive that was in the laptop during that process when we were doing it was missing.
So she alerted you that the flash drive from the laptop during the verification process in which you had been engaged was not there?
Yes.
And what was your response?
Immediately we were astonished, and we hurried through the door of that tabulation room in search of Mr. Livan.
At that point, were there police officers around?
No police officers.
Now you said you went in search of Mr. Livan. Were you accompanied by anyone?
Yes, the entire room basically came out. There were party agents and there were a few observers at that point.
Okay. Now you went in search of Mr. Livan. Did you know his first name?
At that point, no.
Do you know it now?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it's Enrique Livan.
And had you known him before that day?
No.
So you went in search of him. There were other people with you. Did you eventually find him?
Yes, we found Mr. Livan.
Can you tell us in what circumstances you did so?
Well, we entered a room to the eastern end of the Ashman's building on the same ground floor. And in that room, we opened the knob. And it was a large room, probably the size of these 4 columns. We saw Mr. Livan. Well, I saw, because I pushed the door, saw Mr. Livan to the desk, the corner of the room had a desk, and to the other corner had a printer. Saw him at the printer with some documents being printed.
Okay. Was he the only person in that room at the time?
No, I recall 2 other GCOM staff.
Did anyone from, well, I think I may have asked you this already, but just in case, did anyone from APNU and AFC accompany you on that search?
I don't recall them being around at that point.
When you saw him in the corner of that room, did you speak to Mr. Livan?
Yes, I asked him, what are you doing there?
And you had been told by Miss Parag something about a flash drive. Did you
Yes.
ask Mr. Livan anything about the flash drive?
Yes, well, after he had us sat, I saw the black flash drive on the desk and into the laptop. So I asked him, what is that flash drive doing there? And then again asked him, what are you printing?
So when you entered that, sorry.
I'm sorry, Doctor, I didn't hear that very clearly. You saw the flash drive on a desk?
In the laptop.
You saw it in the lab?
Yes, in the laptop.
And it was from that laptop that Mr. Livan was printing some documents?
I would like to say, believe so.
Yes, thank you.
So we've got to the point where you saw him in the corner, and I beg your pardon, you saw him in the corner and you asked him what he was doing. You asked him about the flash drive because you'd seen it on the table. Did you ask him anything else?
Basically, what is he continuously asking him, what are you doing? And what are you doing with these documents here?
Okay. And what documents were those?
Those were the documents that were in the printer. So when I got in, it was actively printing sheets. And by the time we had spoken with him, it had completed.
What did he do, if anything, with those documents that he had been printing?
So those documents were left in the printer. And as I recall, they were left there until the police arrived.
Now, when you asked Mr. Livan about all of these things, what he was doing, what were those papers, asked him about the flash drive, did he say anything in reply?
On a few instances, he had said, no, this is nothing. And he said that multiple times. And a few other instances, he would just stare blankly.
Did any of the other GCOM workers say anything?
No, they were silent.
Now, you said this laptop, there was a laptop on the desk with a flash drive
Yes,
in that other room, correct?
yes.
Did Mr. Livan ever go towards that desk where the laptop was?
Yes, he was sitting at that desk.
And did you see the police at some point?
Yes, we had summoned the police.
When you
And-
say we, who do you mean?
Well, one of the party representatives had summoned the police. I can't recall exactly who, but I was told that the police was summoned, and we kept the door open and we stood at that door just to make sure that nothing else was moving.
And while you were by the door, were you in a position to see Mr. Livan?
Yes.
And what, if anything, was he doing?
Well, he was just sitting at the desk, and at one point, after some others had questioned him, he had closed that laptop and laid on it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say he would have taken a rest. He bowed himself down on the laptop.
He put his head down on
Put
the
his head
laptop?
down, yeah.
At some point, the police arrived?
Yes.
And how did you know they were police officers?
They identified themselves.
Were they in uniform?
The one that I spoke with, he was not in uniform.
And do you recall the names of any of those officers?
At this point in time, I can't. But they were identified as the commanding officers for Brickdown.
The commanding officer for Brickdown.
Yes.
Did the police enter that room?
Yes, they did.
And when the police got, well, after the police got there, did you at any time see GCOM's CEO?
Yes, shortly after the police had arrived, the CEO showed up.
Did you see or hear the police do anything?
Yes, they were interrogating Mr. Livan.
Were you able to, well, you were inside the room or still outside?
At this point, when the police came for their investigation, I had stepped a bit back, but I was still in the capacity to hear a few of their conversations.
All right. And was Mr. Livan asked by the police anything about the flash drive and the laptop?
Yes, he was asked similar questions which we asked. What is the flash drive? Where did it come from? Which laptop is this? Where did this laptop come from? And so on.
And when the CEO arrived, what occurred?
Well, when he arrived, he had taken into possession the flash drive, and I saw them had exchanges with Mr. Livan, the CEO, and the police, but I was not in a capacity to listen to that conversation in entirety.
And what became of the flash drive then?
Well, at that point, the chief elections officer was holding on to that flash drive.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The chief elections officer was holding that flash drive from there on.
He had possession of it.
He had possession of it.
Did you and other agents ask the CEO to see what was on the flash drive?
Yes. So while in the outsides of the tabulation room, we had pleaded with the chief elections officer to see the contents of that flash drive. After a good back and forth with him, we eventually got him into the tabulation room to show us that content.
Okay. And you had told us you had seen some sheets of paper in the printer. Did you ask to see what had been printed?
Yes, at that time the police had taken those documents and had it with him. I did not get to have a conversation with the police after that.
Sure. So you returned to the tabulation room, and did the other party agents also return to the room?
Yes, everyone did.
Did the CEO go to the tabulation room?
Yes, he did.
And what about Mr. Livan?
Mr. Livan also accompanied him.
Can you recall whether any other GCOM employees returned to the tabulation room?
No.
When Mr. Livan returned to the tabulation room, what did he do?
Well, he, after going back and forth again with the chief elections officer, asking him to see the contents of that flash drive, he eventually said, okay, we'll look at it, and he asked Mr. Livan to place the flash drive in the laptop that was in the room.
Now, I need you to be a little clearer about this. You said after going back and forth with the chief elections officer, what do you mean by that?
Right. Well, we were asking him.
When you say we,
well,
explain who you mean.
So myself and the party agents were asking him to see the contents of that flash drive, which he's saying that it's not the same flash drive. And
The
that
chief
is,
elections officer is saying that?
yes, he's saying that it's not the same flash drive that was in the room, it's a different flash drive.
Did you hear Mr. Livan say any such thing to the chief elections officer?
No.
So, what was your response when the chief elections officer is saying this is not the flash drive?
I basically asked him, how could you be so sure that it's not the flash drive that was in the room? You weren't present at that time.
And what was his response to that?
He kept saying that, no man, this is not the same flash drive. And then other party agents were asking him similar questions, and eventually he gave in and said, let's go look at the flash drive.
Okay. Now, how long did that process take before he agreed to have a look at the contents of the flash drive?
I put it anywhere between 15 minutes to half an hour. We were back and forth.
So, having returned to the tabulation room with Mr. Livan, the CEO, party agents, and others, could you tell us what then occurred?
Right, so Mr. Livan had inserted the flash drive into the laptop that was in the tabulation room, and it was projected onto a projected screen, showing us his spreadsheet.
And what happened then?
Right, so we started to see numbers which were not corresponding, and the entire crowd had an uproar, asking what are those numbers, where did those numbers come from?
And when you say they were not corresponding, with what were they not corresponding?
They were not corresponding to the statement of polls that I was in possession of and other party agents were in possession of.
So you say there was an uproar, and well, what did you do? What did you say, and to who?
Right, so at one point I recall asking Mr. Lowenfield if we had to beg him to find the correct documents, because they were saying, Mr. Lowenfield and Mr. Livan was saying that they couldn't find the documents which we were previously working on.
They said they couldn't find the documents you all had been previously working on?
Yes.
Did they eventually find the document that you all had been previously working on?
Yes, after searching the laptop, they eventually found the document we were working on.
And how long did it take for that process to happen? I beg your pardon, Commissioner.
No. Go ahead.
Yes, how long did it take that process?
That process probably took us over into another morning it went on for about an hour.
To find that the
No, to
documents you all had been working on before?
To find the documents, it was taking about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you say when those numbers were put up, people complained that they were not matching the statements of polls that they had.
The initial set of numbers that were put up, yes.
Sure. Now, what was the reaction of the APNU and AFC representatives, party representatives in the room when all of this was going on?
I didn't recognize any of them there at that point.
When people complained, when you and others complained about the differences in the numbers being shown, was the CEO there?
Yes, he was present.
And did anyone ask him about the discrepancy in the numbers?
Yes, persons did ask him.
Can you now recall who asked him?
Persons, the Liberty and Justice Party leader, Mr. Schuman, was asking him, and the presidential candidate for the People's Progressive Party was also questioning him.
And what did Mr. Lowenfield say, if anything?
Well, he kept trying to tell us that the spreadsheets are there, it's just a matter of finding it, and he was basically most of the time just looking at us and smiling.
Did the verification process continue that night?
No, it had ended.
How did it come to end?
Well, after we had found the spreadsheets that we were working on, We basically, the then presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party suggested that we have the documents printed, and each party agent should have a copy of that document so that we can resume from that exact document the next day.
And did everyone agree to that?
We agreed, and Mr. Lowenfield ended up
Did
having
Mr.
it print.
Lowenfield also agree?
Yes, he agreed to it.
Did you remain at Ashman's?
That entire night, I stayed at Ashman's and on to the morning, up until 6 a.m. the morning.
And why did you stay there?
Given all that had happened that night, I felt like a lot was amiss and very suspicious. And also the statement of polls and the other documents, official documents from Region 4, were in the tabulation room to the eastern end of that room, and they were just they were in boxes on the ground. It didn't seem very well secured, so each party, most of the parties asked an agent to stay.
Now, the following day, did you have a conversation with two members of your party?
Yes, in the afternoon.
And they told you something?
Yes.
And did you go back to Ashman's building?
Yes, I went over there.
At about what time was this?
This was about 3:30 in the afternoon.
When you got there, did you speak to persons from your party?
Yes, I spoke with members of my party.
And who were these persons?
Excuse me. There was Dr. Gerald Ford and Dr. Asha Kisoon.
And what did they say to you?
They had relayed to me that Mr. Mingo, the returning officer for Region 4, had attempted to make a declaration, and it seemed like it had gone through.
Now, from the time verification had stopped the night before to the time you were having this conversation with the two other members of your party, as far as you were concerned as co-leader of your party, had any verification taken place during that period of time?
During that day, I recall that there was also I got some information from colleagues that there was bomb threats, so the process had stopped. And given the amount of verification we still had outstanding, there was no way that afternoon that the entire list could have been completed.
So when you got to Ashman's at about 3:30 and you had this conversation with your party colleagues, were there other people there?
Yes, there were party agents as well as observers there.
And at this point in time, did you observe whether there were any police officers there?
Yes, there were more police officers there on that day than the previous days.
Well, having heard this talk about a declaration and so on, what was your party's position?
We were astonished, and we decided to prepare a recount letter to be submitted to the chief elections officer.
And did you submit such a letter?
We had that letter prepared at about 6 p.m. that afternoon, but however, we did not see Mr. Lowenfield at any point, so we did not get to submit that letter to him.
And did you get any information about court proceedings?
Yes, I got information that an injunction had been filed and was approved.
Now, while you were there on that day at Ashman's building, had you seen the commission chairperson?
That afternoon, I did not see her.
And were there inquiries as to where she was?
Yes, I did inquire if she was in the building. My
Who
colleagues.
did you ask?
I asked my colleagues, and they had told me that no, she wasn't. However, when I had ventured further into the building, I would have asked one of the the Liberties and Justice Party representative, Mr. Devon, and he had told me that the chairwoman was in the building.
Are you familiar with a Detective Narain?
Yes.
And that evening, did you see him?
Yes, I saw him later that evening
Where?
at the Ashman building.
Was he in uniform?
No, he was in casual clothes.
And can you tell us, well, did you speak to him?
Before, at no point I spoke to him before, until later that evening I spoke with him.
All right. And what was he doing, or where was he going, as far as you could tell?
Well, when I was on the second floor when I first saw him, he seemed to be in a rush, and he was rushing up the stairs to the second floor. And he ventured to the side, he didn't speak with anyone, and he ventured to the side where the stairs to the third floor was, and he was pleading with the police officers to let him pass.
And where were the police officers on the third floor?
They were on the stairs to the third floor, at the bottom of that stairs, barricading it, so no one could enter the third floor.
And how did you know they were police officers?
They were in uniforms.
At this point in time, you were on the second floor, correct?
Yes.
Were you in a position to hear what was being said on the third floor?
No.
Did you see Detective Narain have access to the third floor, or get access to the third floor?
So he was pleading with the police officers to let him by, but they were being difficult about it, and just
when
a
you say
few.
they were being difficult, is it that they were telling him something?
Well, they were verbally exchanging as well, saying, "No, you cannot enter the third floor. It's prohibited at this point." And
Did he say why he wanted to go to the third floor?
yes, he continuously told them that the chairwoman had called him, and he said his relative, actually, the chairwoman was his relative, and that she was calling him, saying that she was not feeling well.
And when he said that to the police officers, what was their reply, if any?
They didn't seem to care about that.
So how did that situation resolve itself?
Well, just a few minutes, probably about 5 to 8 minutes after detective had ventured upstairs, the ambulance came and the paramedics came out, and they also came up in a rush to the second floor. They pleaded with the police officer to assist them in getting upstairs, and they complied. And then Detective Narain got to go up, and then we all got to go up.
So all of you went up at the same time?
No, the paramedics went up at first. Detective Narain followed them, and then eventually, just about a matter of 30 seconds, we basically broke that barricade and went up.
You all broke the barricade?
Yeah, well, we forced ourselves through that barricade.
Okay. Now, did you see where in particular on the third floor the paramedics and Detective Narain had gone?
Well, they were looking at throughout all of the rooms, and there was one room open, and they ventured into that room, and they were trying to ask the man that was in that room where the chairwoman was, and ventured outside back. When they were outside, I was outside with them, and we noticed that a door, which I was bracing, and that door had all of its locks missing, and it was secured.
I don't follow you.
I don't.
Sorry.
Yes. No, go ahead. It's the same concern I had. If the locks are missing,
Yes.
how was the door secured?
Right, so that was where it became interesting and very suspicious. So the door was shut, no way of accessing it, and all of the locks on the outside were broken off.
What do you mean? The lock or the handle?
The handles rather. So the lock was intact, but the handles were all broken off. Forgive me, sorry.
Yes. And did you push against that door?
Yes, I started to push against that door and kick that door.
Could you tell me why?
Given all that was going on, and given the state of the Detective Narain, he seemed very frustrated, and given that an injunction was to be filed, And also, given that it's the chairwoman of the Guyana Elections Commission, I was thinking in my head, if something is wrong with her and something should go wrong with her, how long or how derailed this process would get. So, given my medical empathy as well, I decided to have a go at that door, given that thinking and hoping that the chairwoman was in that room.
Were you assisted by anyone?
Yes, there was another gentleman to my right, but I can't recall exactly who it was.
And did you get through that door?
Yes, I got through that door.
Tell us what happened when you got through that door.
So the last kick, door broke loose. I got into that room. I saw there was a room within a room, so that the outside of that room had just desks and chairs. I looked straight ahead to north, and I saw the other room, which had a door that was slightly opened. I went to that room and I pushed that door open. When I pushed that room door open, I saw Madam Chair seated on a couch with Miss Roxanne Myers on that couch handle to the right of her, and the room had about 12 men inside.
Okay. Now, when you say Miss Roxanne Myers, do you know what position she held
Yes, she was the Deputy Chief Elections Officer at that point
of GCOM?
of GCOM.
And there were 12 men in that room.
Yes,
Chair was sitting on the couch.
yes.
And how did she appear to you?
For me, she appeared very flustered. She looked very pale. She didn't seem well.
Did you have an opportunity to speak to her?
Well, when I got in, I did not personally address her, but the colleague behind me, he was videoing at that point, and he was continuously asking Miss Chairwoman, how is she doing, if she's
Oh,
okay.
please, you're kind of eating up your words. We'd like to hear that clearly.
So, when I had gotten into that room, I did not speak with her directly, but the colleague who had entered behind me, he was videoing at that point, and he had asked Miss Chair if she was doing okay and how is she doing in general.
Was this colleague the AmCham observer, Anton Orion? Can you recall?
Yes.
And
Um,
no, the colleague you entered the room with the chairperson with was a male colleague?
Yes, was a male. He was an AmCham observer. AmCham being the American Chamber of Commerce. Yes.
And this AmCham observer asked the chairwoman how she was doing and so on.
Yes.
And did she reply?
I didn't recall her replying at any point.
And did Miss Roxanne Myers say anything to you all?
She did not say anything, but I recall her putting her hand up, and as soon as she had put her hand up, I felt myself being pulled out of that room.
By whom?
We were pulled out of that room by officers, police officers.
And when you say we were pulled out of that room, of whom do you speak?
It was myself and Mr. Narayan.
Are you familiar with the name Gypsy Prasad?
Yes.
Who is that person?
She is another observer who was in the room with us.
Okay, can you recall what observer group she was from?
She is also from the American Chamber of Commerce.
Did the police, well, you say the police pulled you and Mr. Narayan out of that room,
Yes.
and what became of you all?
We were placed in the outer room, in that room. We were placed in the outer room for about an hour. We were asked to put our hands above our head, basically to surrender. And we were searched and we were questioned.
Was it just the two of you?
No, at that point it was all three of us.
When you say all three, who's the third?
The third was Miss Gypsy Prasad. So myself and Anton Narayan entered the room with the chairwoman. However, Miss Gypsy Prasad was still outside in that other room.
Yes.
Right. So we pulled out, and when we were pulled out, we saw her outside there as well.
Okay, and the three of you were made to put your hands up and stand in that room?
Yes.
About how many police officers were in that room?
There were 3 police officers.
And you said they questioned you?
Yes, they were asking us, what are you doing in here? Why did you break the property of the government? And along those lines.
And did they tell you anything about, or did they mention APNU and AFC?
Yeah, well, I recalled one of them saying that the APNU AFC has won the election, so why are we fighting?
Now, how long did the three of you remain in that room?
We were in there for about an hour.
And during that period of time, were you able to see what, if anything, was happening outside?
No, the door was shut tight, and I could have heard all of the noises die down.
Were you eventually escorted out of that room?
Yes, we were escorted out of that room.
And where were you taken?
So we were escorted out of that room and taken onto the balcony of that floor. Sorry, the second floor. And we were lined up there for about 15 minutes until they got us again. And we were escorted down by about a large group of officers down to the ground floor. And myself and the AmCham observer was placed in a police vehicle and taken to the Bergdam police station.
Were you charged?
Yes.
And were you bailed or kept there at the station?
So we were there for about until about 2 p.m. that morning, where we received bail.
And up to this date, have you received any notification to go to court on those charges?
No.
Now, after you were bailed, did you at any point return to Ashman's building?
Yes, so I had specifically asked my colleagues who picked me up to take me back to the Ashman's building that night.
And were you able to enter Ashman's building?
No, the entire building was sealed shut, and we weren't even allowed to get within about 30 to 50 feet within the building.
Why?
It was barricaded and secured by police officers.
Now, I want to ask you this. While you were in that room after the police pulled you out, did you see the chairperson?
No.
Did you see Miss Myers?
No.
What about Detective Narayan? Did you see him?
Detective Narayan was also taken down to the police station with us.
He was also arrested?
He was not kept in the same room, but we eventually ended up at the station together.
I see. Okay. Now, I'm just going to summarize this a little bit. There was, after some time, there was a recount of votes.
Yes.
And you witnessed that?
Yes.
And was this at the Arthur Chung Convention Center?
Yes.
At Lilendal?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, I have some audio-visual material which I would like to use before this witness ends his testimony, but I would like to have the opportunity to make sure that I don't waste your time by trying to use equipment which is not functioning properly. So I'm wondering whether we can take the break for today at this point and have Dr. Kanhai return in the morning.
The video information that you have, is there a difficulty with putting it on CD? Having the doctor verify that that's a true recording that was made by him or
But Commissioner, let me answer the question this way. I have to rely on the IT specialists who have been assigned to the inquiry. So I am sure that if that is possible, that I will make the request of them and provide you either with a flash drive or with a CD, so that those could be given to you and one perhaps could be put in as an exhibit. But whether that is possible at this point, I need to be able to confirm.
So what you're asking is
Asking us to continue, to permit me to continue with this witness tomorrow morning. If
It
need.
will be ready by tomorrow. You can perhaps ask the doctor to come back when you're ready. I don't think it's so advisable to bring him and you're not ready.
yeah, I think
Indeed, and I'm guided.
contact him if you need.
Certainly, absolutely. Well, in those circumstances, Dr. Kanhai,
You're relieved until
Well, thank you, Chair. Dr. Kanhai, this was your first effort at national elections, national and regional elections,
Yes, sir.
because your party was new.
Yes, sir.
But were you involved in the verification process for regions other than Region 4?
No, we were not possible to get any candidates in the outlying regions.
You didn't
to-
field candidates in
Yes, the outlying
6 or 2 or 3?
in 4 of those regions.
Sorry?
In 4 of those regions, we did not contest. But for the verification process in regions 3, which was one of the closest, we had candidates at the polling station only, and they had gotten their SOPs, and from that, they were given to us.
Well, let me ask you this then. The events that you have recounted for us, those events relate to the verification process for Region 4.
Yes.
And so you couldn't tell us anything about the verification process for other regions.
I can tell you that Regions 3 verification process, we had no issues reported back to us. We had candidates in Region 8. They said that went smoothly, the voting and everything went smoothly for that region as well. And that's as far as I recall.
So, in relation to the verification process for Region 4, 9 regions had been completed without issue. Is that what you're saying?
Basically,
That's correct?
yes.
And for the verification process for Region 4, based on what we've heard so far, it seems as though this was a very, for varying reasons, including people being tired and flash drives going into rooms and police intervening, this process was extremely protracted.
It was extremely protracted, sir.
From your experience, it was spread over a number of days.
Yes. And that can be given to the fact that Region 4 is the largest populated region. So usually that would take about max, I believe, from previous elections that went on for about 2 to 3 days. But
Yeah.
this one had gone on for way too long.
Thank you.